Before starting out with the online session, we request all the participants to go through the scientific material data, which actually gives us an insight into why we are giving this program. Let's understand the pathophysiology of stress as per the science. The stress hormone is cortisol, and it has the same precursor as dehydroepiandrosterone. The DHEA, as it is called, has many protective and health promoting functions and contributes to longevity. With stress, the production gets diverted to cortisol, and there is a lowered level of DHEA, the protective hormone. On the other hand, with low stress, there is a lowered level of cortisol and in turn a raised level of DHEA. Cortisol has been shown to reduce muscle mass, increase bone loss and osteoporosis, increase fat accumulation around the waist and hips, and reduce memory and learning abilities. Not only it has such an effect on a human body, but also on the baby that is a fetus inside the womb. The cortisol itself is supposed to have a detrimental effect on the growth of the baby, its immunity and intelligence. This was a very beautiful work which is conducted by Professor Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist. We acknowledge his work done. Let's understand the pathophysiology behind stress from our understanding of the Vedic tradition. Any form of restlessness, agitation and discomfort over any issue or incident happening outside is called a conflict situation. A conflict situation always arises within due to our conflicting thought patterns. It has nothing to do with the external situation, but everything to do with how we look at the situation. So when we talk about these conflicting thought patterns, what exactly is a pattern is what we need to understand. It is an action that is unfulfilled because of an outer or an inner hindrance and leaves you in a powerless space emotionally, remaining in us as a hangover of the past. This is considered to be an incompletion itself. Please understand, if your expectations are not met by yourself or by others, it remains within as an incompletion. We need to complete with all these incompletions. This is the basic step in life. When the hindrance is from within, one needs to complete with oneself. If you have certain fantasies about you, either fulfill them or drop them. Dropping them also makes you complete, as it is not remaining as a hangover within. When the hindrance is from outside, one needs to complete with others. Whatever hurt you are carrying, reach out to the other person and complete. One needs to authentically listen to the cries of the heart. Your heart continues to cry for your attention. Authentically listen to it. Listening does not mean doing what your heart says. Sometimes only hearing out itself is enough. Authentic listening happens when you are in completion, and vice versa, completion happens from listening. Primarily, before completion, one needs to identify the conflicting thought pattern which brought in the incompletion. To identify this conflicting thought pattern, one must analyze the conflict in one's life, starting from the immediate past to well into your childhood, and understand three aspects of the conflict. The first one, what are the powerless words that you give to yourself when the conflict happens? We need to understand this very beautifully. As a conflict situation is happening, there is a moment of time during that situation when we feel very powerless and we feel very down. We feel we cannot handle that situation, and that is the moment of time when we give powerless words to ourselves. It may be just a deep emotion of helplessness. It could be many other things, but distinctly a powerlessness, because a conflict situation happens only when there is powerlessness. At that point of time, when a conflict really happens, as we've already mentioned, that there is a feeling of powerlessness, And many a time we give words like these to ourselves. I am helpless, I've been targeted, I am lonely, I'm afraid, I'm guilty. And this is what is called as the mamakara, the idea that I have about me. The next aspect, so this is one aspect of the conflict situation as we are analyzing a conflict. The second part is the idea I have about life. That is the idea I have about the other person in this conflict situation. This is known as the swa anyakara. Like it could be the world rejects me, the world uses me, and things like that, or the world doesn't care for me. So during a time of a conflict situation, this is one part which is the mamakara, wherein I give powerless words to myself. The other side of it is what I have as an idea about life, that is the idea about the other person in the conflict situation, which is known as the swa anyakara. Now we have a third aspect to this. How did I respond to the situation during a conflict? It is like it could be I cried, I moved away, I ran away from the situation, I escaped, or I stood there, I fought, or I took on the responsibility of completing the act. There are many, many ways of doing it. The moment you find that something has got completed in that conflict situation and it seems to the outside world as a success, then you know that you've combated the situation quite well for that moment of time. There could be other moments of time when you have not felt so strong and you've run away from the situation, you've given up on life and you've just cried and not actually bothered to fight the conflict situation. And those are the moments you've actually failed. So one side of it is through the conflict situation a success has happened, through the conflict situation a failure has also happened. To the outside world, the success may seem, oh, this person has handled the situation very well. Wow, she's great. Or it could be, she's chickened out, she doesn't know how to handle it. But both aspects, when you look at it, have come from a very powerless foundation. The words that we gave to ourselves during the conflict situation, those powerless words form the foundation for either the success or the failure. Hence, its expression is not 100%. Understanding that if the expression had come from the powerful foundation itself, it would have been something phenomenal. It would have seen 100% of its expression. But the very fact that it came from a base which was powerless and then as a response to it, it is not 100% of its expression. Now this response to a conflict situation is what is known as an ahankara. I repeat, the response or the reaction to a conflict situation is what is called as a ahankara. What we need to actually work towards is creating that space or creating a foundation whereby we feel powerful all the time, which would mean handling a conflict situation from a powerful space, understanding that you are not those words that you give to yourself. Let me quote an example in this situation. This little child of about 7 has all along been sleeping with her mother in the night. She has the company of her mother every night, right from the time she was born. But that particular night, the mother was not available. She had to attend to her mother, that is the child's grandmother. At that moment of time, the child knew that the mother was not there. There is an absence of the mother which has hit the child emotionally. And she has felt the absence of the mother very strongly. So at this point of time, there is an incompletion in the child and she is not able to analyze, understand that her mother had to attend to her mother. So at that point of time, what happens is there is a negative emotion in the child and she has the memory of this incident as a negative emotion with her. But she's unable to analyze the situation because her analytical power is not developed enough to understand the situation. So what happens in her is the words which she gives to herself in this situation is, I am afraid, I am lonely, are those powerless words that come from her mouth about her. The idea that she has about life is, the world has rejected me, it has abandoned me. That is the idea that she has about her mother. And that is the idea she has about life in general. After this situation, this conflict situation, every situation that comes in her way as a conflict situation, she only handles it with this idea that she is lonely and she is afraid, and that life has abandoned her, life has rejected her. And this is because of the incompletion and an improper cognition that she has about herself. But this repeatedly comes into her as words, powerless words, in every conflict situation that she goes through in life thereafter, even as an adult. So with this, we actually move on. This is a basic idea about what we understand as conflict situations and what is it that brings on stress in us, the pathophysiology of stress as we understand it from the Vedic tradition. Let's look at what science has to say about it. Science speaks of the similar biomemories, or what we call as conflicting thought patterns, as limbic imprints. The scientific material content is actually been given to you in this session as the written material, which you could go through prior to listening out to the next session of the third month.